Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Happy holidays, everybody. How are you, Rob?
I'm good. I've got myself my two little pre-Christmas treats at the moment. I'm sporting my Carlos Sainz 55 hat, which I got in the end of season sale, which means two things. A, I think the name on the side is now wrong because they're not Williams Racing anymore or whatever it is. That's probably why it was cheap. And then you told me that Carlos will probably change his number this year as well, just to kind of stab the knife in. So
It'll be 54 just to be one off.
yeah. But I have got a dad joke that's been going around my head all week since this and something else arrived on the same day. You're not going to get this. Pit Lane Paul did. I already showed it to him. So I bought this Stanley, which is
Arsenal?
it is Arsenal, well done. But the yellow and blue design here is from the early 90s. It was affectionately known as the bruised banana because it's yellow with like blue bits on it. So when you put together my Carlos Sainz hat has arrived and my Arsenal Stanley bruised banana has arrived, in my head I've been singing bruised operator. I told you it was a dad joke,
That's
but
bad.
I haven't been able to get it out of my head. Ever.
Bad.
So bad, so bad. It's so bad that we shouldn't even do an episode this week. We should just pick one from our historical back catalogue and do that instead.
You know, now that you say it, that sounds like a great idea.
So, as we did last year, we're going to take some time off over the holidays and we'll be back in the new year with a proper episode. So, we're going to delve into our extensive back catalogue. We've both picked one for the 2 weeks that we're going to be away. You're up first, Brian. So, what are we listening? What are we re-listening to today for folk that may not have caught it the first time round?
One of my favorite Vale's tales that we've done, Nigel Mansell. And not just for the plethora of mustache nicknames that I run through to open and to close. Not just for the amazing stats, but he's a unique guy, both in terms of intelligence and kind of what he's done, but also because he's kind of prickly and doesn't really believe everyone's given him the chance he deserves. So he's a unique guy. I'd like to hear more about Nigel. What do you say, Rob?
Yeah, I think it was a good pick. So I was just quickly going back and listening to it, and yeah, bits at the beginning about how he got into the sport, what he gave up, sort of just shirking off broken bones as just, it's a flesh wound. I'll get on with it, but I don't want to spoil it too much. So we're going to jump into. You thought DRS was dead, but here we will go with Dirty Side Revisited series, episode 1, Nigel Mansell. This week, Vale's Tales, we will look at the career of Nigel Mansell. Oh my gosh, there was so much to unpack on this that I probably did know, but didn't attribute it so much to him. So we're going to go through, right from his early days all the way through to when he finally retired and some other little sprinklings that we found along the way. I was going to start it, Brian, but you wrote this opening line, and I think it's going to be better coming from you.
Well, it can only come from me. His parents ran a tea shop, and his name is Nigel. Could he be any more British? I mean, as a card-carrying American, guy's named Nigel, and his parents run sell tea. we dumped that stuff in the harbor. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I was shocked. Gosh. I mean, anyway, but he is an amazing driver. I'd agree. As we kind of launching it here, I remember his amazingness partially because of his mustache, partially because of his dental drapes, the lady tickler, the mouth mane, the soup strainer, the lip curtain. We'll do more, but Rob, kind of kick us off with how he started.
Oh my gosh. So he actually got into racing sort of fairly late. He had karting. He had some good success in karting, which a lot of people do. Is kind of their kind of gateway in. And he entered into Formula Ford massively against his father's wishes, who probably, I guess, wanted him to eventually take over the tea shop. But Nigel had his sights set elsewhere. And then in 1976, he entered Formula Ford and he won 6 out of 9 races. He entered quite late in the season, so that's why kind of it's a small number of races. But that wasn't a fluke. He came back in 77 and he became British Formula Ford champion. And what goes with it, I had to actually read through twice and validate on a number of different websites because this is something I didn't know about him and is almost Hollywood level crazy. At Brands Hatch, he suffered a broken neck in qualifying.
Oh my gosh.
And in hospital, the doctor said he was kind of I don't know the biological term. We'll go for half a vertebrae. Yeah, whatever. Very, very close to being completely paralysed. But he was ordered to be confined in hospital for 6 weeks and was warned that he would never race again. And the story goes that he snuck out of hospital by telling the nurses he was going to the toilet and actually discharged himself and when returned to racing. It was like, what? Yeah, I'm just got to pop to the bathroom. Where is it? It's over there. What, these overalls? No, ignore those. That's why I always go to the bathroom in. It's like the guy just runs away out of hospital and goes back to racing. A guy is completely driven, no pun intended, to be part of racing because just before he'd entered Formula Ford, he'd basically sold all of his personal possessions to basically finance his way in.
I found an article, and I'm hoping it's accurate. I don't remember the site on this one, but not only did he sell his possessions to continue his Formula Ford racing, but he'd resigned his job as an aerospace engineer.
Yes. Yeah.
You saw that too somewhere?
Yeah.
That is so he's a brilliant guy. I mean, he's
a brilliant guy,
engineer.
But he knows what he wants to do, and aerospace engineer isn't it. So he junks it all in, resigns, sells everything that he owns, starts racing, only to break his neck. And then once he's told he's never going to race again, he'll say, "Hold my beer. I think I'm going."
Not only that, he then gets in. He wants to get into Formula 3, and with the backing of his wife Roseanne, they sold their house to fund his entry into F3. So like we talked about with Nick DeVries, the creativity and the need to be able to get yourself into the race. I just need a seat in a car and I'll show you what I can do. Nick has shown us that. And without Nigel doing what he did, quitting his aerospace engineer job, selling everything to keep going in Formula Ford, with his wife selling his house to get into F3, that's insane. I love this already.
Yeah, absolutely. And then he didn't exactly set the world alight. Like 78 through 80, he's in Formula 3, and he's consistent, but he's not really in a good car. So it's more his driving style that's catching the eye rather than his results. And you think, well, he's probably had all the bad luck he's going to have, and he can go onwards and upwards now. But no. He has a collision with Andrea de Cesaris, which leads to a huge cartwheeling accident, Huge cartwheeling accident, leaving him hospitalised again with a broken vertebrae this time. Not long after the accident, couldn't find the exact timings of this one, but he managed to score a tryout for Lotus at the Paul Ricard circuit and had to go there basically dosed up to the eyeballs on painkillers so that he didn't give away the fact that he probably really still shouldn't be racing. And it was a testing run for Lotus. They were really trying to put other drivers through the paces to see who was going to compete for the second seat. And Mansell put in such a performance, he managed to secure test driver for Lotus the following season.
So in 1980, we have Nigel at Lotus. He gets his first race in Austria, and there's a fuel leak in the cockpit, which leaves him with first and second degree burns on his rump, which, by the way, if anyone was watching Haas at the end of the year, Mick had a little situation, no actual fire, but he had a situation where...
Hey, my ass is burning.
So, he could relate to the situation. But could you imagine if a fuel leak in the cockpit causes fire, first and second degree burns? But that's how he started in F1. And the guy's had two massive accidents, basically almost gotten paralyzed twice, lights himself on fire in the first race in F1 in the Lotus. We're going to talk, we have a lot of stats at the end. Reliability was not something you would describe Nigel's cars having over the course of his career.
No, his Lotus years then kind of, they gave him a couple more drives, but engine failures and retirements just meant that it kind of didn't look like he was going to go his way. But then at the end of the year, Andretti left and went to Alfa Romeo, which meant that Mansell got the seat for 1981. So he had his season there. And I love this. I don't know. There's some stories about Mansell was a little bit of a... Well, I'm going to say it. He could be a bit of an ass, especially when it came to
demanding too.
A little demanding. But he had a friend and mentor in the team boss, Chapman, and Mansell wanted to carry on funding his career. He wasn't getting paid a huge amount, and he found that he could go and drive in Le Mans. And Chapman came to him and said, well, I'm going to give you the 10 grand that you would have got for competing in Le Mans. I will pay you to not race there because I don't think you can stretch yourself so thin to go to both. Story goes, he agreed. Those two really got on super well, and Chapman was basically building the Lotus team around Mansell. only for bad luck to strike, well, both of them, more for Chapman. Chapman suddenly drops dead in 82, and Mansell is like devastated. His friend and mentor and guy that's building the team around him is now no longer around, and new principal Peter Waugh comes in, and he's not a Mansell fan.
So at this point, Mansell's basically trying to hang on to his job with a new boss. He lost his friend. He lost his mentor. And Waugh basically says to him, before he ends up replacing him, he'll never win a Grand Prix as long as I have a hole in my ass, was what he said. That's
the support you want from a team principal,
exactly.
Isn't it?
I mean, from Nigel asking for specific brake setups, which they disagree with, the team principal disagree with. It was not meant to be anymore for him at Lotus. However, there's one story I don't want to miss, which I knew about, but I didn't know when it happened in his career. And it was in Dallas, the only time F1 raced in Dallas here in the States and Texas. And it was the hottest day on record. Tire supplier Goodyear recorded a track temperature, and we all know it's hotter than the ambient temperature. It's on the track where the cars are, 66 degrees Celsius, which is 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And so they're out there racing. The track is literally coming apart hours beforehand. They're working on it. He had qualified on pole, but had some challenges with his tires, and then K.K. Rosberg had gotten past him. But here's the point of this whole story. He ends up with some gearbox problems, and he literally, the car comes to a halt, and he can see the finish line. And he gets out, and in his, and I'm quoting now at this point, irrational single-mindedness, tried to push his car across the line. He was exhausted and dehydrated from toiling for 2 hours in the heat, and he was literally pushing the car uphill, and within a matter of meters of pushing it, collapsed to the ground. Mansell would later say, I was so angry I just kept pushing. Then the lights went out, and I woke up in hospital on a drip in a bed packed with ice.
It's another hospital visit for Mansell.
But this is what he did to himself, trying to push the car across in 150 degrees in his fire suit, and he'd been racing for 2 hours. This guy is single-minded, the Terminator.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of brought the curtain down on his Lotus career, and he joined Williams in 1985. He hadn't had the best of relationships with a lot of the drivers that he'd been in the teams to date, and he came in as the second driver to Keke Rosberg, and apparently, story goes, the two of them really struck up a good relationship, both in the pit lane and also as friends outside it. Then we get on to more disaster moments for him. As he's getting into Williams, getting my feet under the table, let's show what I can do. He set a record that he probably never wanted to hold, which is in the 1985 French Grand Prix. He set the highest speed crash in Formula One history. Good old Paul Ricard, pit lane Paul's favourite track. He went straight off the fast Courbe de Cime. Yeah, whatever. At over 322 kilometers an hour, which is just over 200 miles an hour, suffered a concussion. So probably another trip to the hospital, and that kept him out for another 2 races. So it wasn't the best start to life at Williams.
Nope, but he got his first win in 72 starts at the European Grand Prix at Brands Hatch. And then he got a second victory right away after that in South Africa at Kyalami, which we were so close, I thought, to adding to 2023, but not. And then he got a new teammate the next year.
Yeah, and things, as we've already kind of unpicked here, we're only at 1986. We've had a lot of turbulence in Mansell's career, and it's fair to say Piquet came and brought in a whole bunch of turbulence. The two did not get on. Piquet publicly described Mansell as an uneducated blockhead. He also criticised Mansell's wife Roseanne's looks, and then had to actually retract that statement due to the threat of legal action. It's not sounding like Piquet came in and was willing to be besties with our Nige.
He won 5 GPs in '86, played a part in one of the closest finish in F1 history, finishing second to Senna. And this is when they used to finish most of the time in Jerez, not always, but close to. So the race was so close at this point, it was 0.014 seconds. And Mansell joked they should give them each 7.5 of the 15 at the time for winning.
Yeah, and in '86, Mansell was basically out in front, and it went down to the wire in Adelaide. the good old Australian Grand Prix, which is going to raise its head again in not too many years as we get through here. But you had Prost, Piquet and Mansell all still in contention for the title. Prost and Piquet needed to win and have Mansell finish no higher than fourth. So Mansell really needs third place, which is going to guarantee him the victory. And his left tyre went bye-bye in spectacular fashion. If you Google it for this particular race, it's a blowout and a half. 19 laps to go, and there came to an end his championship chances that year. And he kind of looked back on it in regret. He did an interview with Sky Sports News in 2012 where he basically said if he'd have actually just hit the wall rather than wrestling the car safely to a halt in the runoff area, there's a good chance the race would have been red flagged. If he'd have just let the car go, smash up, take the red flag, as they'd done more than 2/3 distance, they probably would have counted that as the result, and he'd have won his first title. But you know, he's British. It's what we do. He did the right thing, wrestled his car to a halt, and that was the end of that. But he did at least win Sports Personality of the Year that year in '86. 1987, 6 wins, including a huge comeback at Silverstone where he was 28 seconds behind with 30 laps left to beat Piquet. And given the blockhead comments he'd made about him, I'm hoping he kind of did the finger pistols that Danny Rick had done as he went past him. Then, again, another accident. It really feels like we're telling a story here of Mansell crashes, but he had a big accident at Suzuka, which saw Mansell miss the rest of the season. Piquet won again, and rather than come out and say, I hope he's okay, it's a shame that my teammate is out, Piquet said that his win over Mansell in the championship was a win of intelligence over stupidity. I'm really not loving Piquet's...
Well, and it's not like he wins us back in his retirement either.
That's just what I was going to say.
Yeah, so, you know, what's interesting to me is if you kind of take a step back and look at the macro, in 86 and 87, Nigel was runner-up both years in the World Drivers' Championship. But then in 88... you know, they really messed up. The car sucked. They changed engine suppliers. He got chicken pox in the summer. I mean, what else could go wrong for the guy? And they really fell kind of off the cliff. And at this point, it wasn't working out for him. And he's like, this is not a fit for me. So we see another change of constructor, another place to take his talents. And he decided to take his talents with the Tifosi to Ferrari.
He did, yeah, and the chickenpox story apparently robbed him of. I didn't really realise this, but apparently because you can sign for new teams early on in the season, as we know, silly season. He'd officially joined Ferrari earlier on in the year, and the drivers will get unveiled then to the Tifosi at Monza, but chickenpox kept him out of that, so he didn't get the big unveiling. But he did go across to Ferrari, and he was actually the last driver personally selected by Enzo Ferrari before he died to become a Ferrari driver. He endeared himself to the Ferrari fans instantly as he won his very first race in Brazil, becoming the first Ferrari driver since Andretti in 1971 to win their first race for Ferrari. The car had reliability issues, but it was kind of being seen as a success by everybody because the car was in a development year. So it was all kind of seen as, right, yep, you've come in, done well, good performance in your first year. This is all about building up to 1990. However, Lady Luck wasn't ready to deal him a good hand again. Yet again, teammate issues cause a big problem for him. So he gets relegated to second driver by Alain Prost, who's just come into the team. Prost speaks Italian fluently, and Mansell basically probably can just order a beer at this point in Italian, and really felt like there was a ganging up almost of everybody against him, and Prost got hugely preferential treatment in the garage. Races didn't go well. He retired from 7 races throughout that season. The only thing, and this was me finding videos now, Brian, not you. I embedded it here. It's a good one. The big notable highlight of the year was he was chasing down Gerhard Berger in Mexico, and they're heading into what was at the time the fastest corner on the F1 calendar. And he bobs and weaves. We'll put a video link in the show notes, but it just shows Mansell stitched right up. I'm going to use your phrase, Brian, right up behind Berger's trumpet, and he is bobbing and weaving behind. And the commentator is good old Murray Walker, and he just throws one down the outside, and somehow these tyres stick all the way around the outside of the corner, and he goes right round and takes second place off Berger. But he finished fifth in the World Drivers' Championship. The car hadn't been the car he was hoping for. Prost had come in and taken all the priority, so he retired. There we go. End of Nigel Mansell.
Right? That's it. 1990, goodbye, thanks. Well, then Frank Williams says, hang on, why don't you come back to Williams, drive for us? And we've talked a little bit about Nigel's stubbornness. I don't know what the other word is. And he said, all right, I'd consider coming back if you meet my demands. Meet my demands. It's like he was holding somebody hostage. I want the undisputed number one status over Riccardo Patrese. I want guarantees of support in a wide variety of areas in writing with assurances from the suppliers as Renault and Alfa that they'd do everything to help him. And Frank Williams came out and said the demands were impossible. Mansell said, fine, I'm just going to retire, as I said. And then 3 weeks later, he signed with Williams. And apparently Frank Williams caved on some, all, any, who knows. So 91 was a good kind of good year mid-season, hat trick of victories in the middle of the year, but Senna's consistency and too many, again, retirements for Nigel meant that he finished second in the championship for the third time in his career. However, they were on the upswing. Those hat trick of victories I mentioned in the middle of the year, it really launched him into 92. And I'm only going to talk a second. Rob, I'll let you talk about 92, and I know we're going to hold some stats from it. But he started the 92 season with 5 straight victories, a record which was not equaled until Schumacher did it in 04. Talk a little, as a British driver who was successful, I'll let you kind of talk a little bit more about 92.
Yeah, and as I was putting all this together, I was kind of thinking back to our conversation with Spanners last week, is that I really remember getting into sport, both football and F1, around kind of the late 80s. So I kind of, looking at our little timeline that we've got here, I really kind of started following Mansell when he was at Ferrari.
Okay.
So that's why, that's where the Ferrari love came, even though the Ferrari car wasn't great. Mansell I loved the moustache, loved the red car he was in. And I kind of followed him, but then I was still, even if you say to me now, Nigel Mansell, what image comes in your head? It's the blue and yellow Williams,
yep.
With his helmet, the camel, elf, all that kind of good stuff, because 1992 was what it was all about. He came right out of the gates and won 5 straight victories. I think he ended up getting 9 victories in that season. And again, we won't rain on your parade for the big SAP stats, the edition that are coming later. But he finally did it. He was crowned Formula One world champion, age 39. At the Hungarian Grand Prix, which was only the 11th round of the season. So he kind of got it done and dusted early doors. If my car's going to fall apart for the rest of the season, it does not matter because I am the driver's champion. That's
done
pretty much
and dusted early doors. 2 expressions that no one in America will understand, but it means he finished it quickly. Anyway,
done and dusted early doors, that you need to get that into the American vernacular. That is what I'm saying.
I do use done and dusted, but I don't use early doors because it doesn't make any sense.
Early doors, add it in.
But it wasn't all sunshine and roses and unicorns and rainbows. He tried to extend his deal early in the year. He found out Alain Prost was going to be his teammate, and that did not thrill him. He asked for more money after all the wins. It started kind of coming apart for him at Williams. And you know what? He kind of said, forget it, I'm retiring. Which is a nice move he likes to pull whenever he wants to move on from a situation.
Yeah, I do feel they kind of screwed him over on this one, though. And I mean, the big reason why he kind of decided to give the up yours to Williams was, maybe he was being a bit too demanding. They'd put a contract offer in front of him. Then he'd started winning all those races and thought, I'm Charlie Big. I better not say the word for that. We're family friendly. But anyway, he got a bit above his station, I think, and said, actually, I want more money. So they came back to him and said, well, sign the original deal, otherwise Senna's going to replace you. And then apparently I don't know how this unfolded, because obviously there was no social media for this to leak on at the time, but Prost, who was his teammate, had apparently got a clause in his contract that forbid him being teammates with Senna ever. Imagine not liking a driver that much that you you put a clause in your contract to say, I'm never going to race with this guy, so you can't bring him into the team. Mansell found out that Prost had this clause, so it was like, so you threaten me with Senna's going to take my seat despite the fact you can't actually do that. Do you know what? Screw this. I'm out of here.
Well, and then he went to IndyCar. And 93, there's an amazing stat I'm about to hit. He signed with Newman Haas Racing, paired with Mario Andretti in the kart series, replaced Mario's son Michael, who moved to F1 at McLaren. So they kind of traded across the pond for different teams, though. And he became the first rookie, air quotes, to take pole position and win his first race. He went on, had 5 wins in the 93 season, and then with a lot of other high-placed finishes, earned him the championship. And because of the timing, because the IndyCar or kart championship at the time was decided before the Formula One championship was decided, he was the only driver in history to hold both the F1 and kart championships at the same time. How cool is that? Now,
that is cool.
It's a limited number of people who have ever won both. We talked with Jacques. He's won. But it's a limited number who's ever won both. But someone won them and held both at the same time. It's like, when the boxer goes in the ring and has multiple belts, there's no one who's ever had the F1 and IndyCar or kart titles at the same time.
Yeah, and then, do you know what? As I look at all of this, this is now kind of... We then come into the end of his career, really. Yep. There's still quite a bit on here, but really it's now bouncing around. Williams convinced him to come back across the pond. Bernie Ecclestone wants to bring him back because Prost has just retired. TV viewer numbers are declining. And they wanted a big name. They wanted a champion back in the fold. So they convinced him to come back, brought him back to Williams. But this is kind of where things, for me, get a little bit...
Yep.
Yeah, it's like he apparently was getting paid $900,000 a race compared to teammate Damon Hill, who was actually going for the title, who got paid $300,000 for the entire season. That doesn't sit well with me. That's a money move. But fair play to Mansell for taking it and coming back. We mentioned Adelaide earlier on, Australia.
Yep.
I'd even forgotten about this one because no one even cares about who won that race. But when Schumacher and Hill had the collision, resulting in Hill dropping out and not taking the title, and Schumacher scoring his title, it was Mansell that went on to win that race. So, yeah, apparently he was under orders to kind of play block and tackle for Hill and keep Schumacher at bay. Mansell had a terrible...
failed.
Yeah, Mansell had a terrible start and both of them jumped him. So he was just pootling around in third. And then when those two came together, he just kind of like popped through the middle of the debris and went,
Thank you.
I'll take the win then, thanks. Couldn't get a new deal sorted. They didn't want to pay that amount of money again. It was ridiculous money. So they went with youth and bought David Squarejaw Coulthard into the into the fold. So he bobbled off to McLaren. McLaren wasn't great. Even the McLaren website itself that I found it from said they're happy to have their name associated with Mansell, but they gave him a dog of a car. His hips were too wide for the car. They had to build a new monocoque to fit him in. He retired from the first 2 races of the season. He retired after the first 2 races of the season.
Do you think he had his resignation letter already typed up and just handed it in at the end of the race each time?
I think he was writing it in the cockpit halfway around the second race. It was like one hand steering and writing his letter with the other one. He did say in 2015 he kind of regretted it, felt like he should have maybe stayed around and helped the team develop the car and kind of passed his wisdom on, but he just had enough. Eddie Jordan almost pulled him back in. Apparently the Jordan team might have been the Mansell-Jordan partnership. He tested for them in 96 but opted against it. And that was that. He's driven a whole bunch of stuff, as well as F1 and IndyCar and the earlier series that we talked about. He's taken his skills to touring car route, the Race of Legends, the Grand Prix Masters circuit, and even had a run out in Le Mans. And let's just hit some of kind of the honours that he got before we go over to the big SAPstat edition for Mansell. If you want to go find them, he's had 6 autobiographies that he's been involved in. He's tagged in. He's involved in 3 video games: Nigel Mansell's GP, Nigel Mansell's World Championship Racing, Newman Haas IndyCar, and was also a playable character in F1 2013. Apparently,
one of those early ones I played a lot. I can't remember which because it was a long time ago, but I definitely played one of the Nigel Mansells. And then
I think
played
I did
recently.
as well.
In retrospect, the graphics are atrocious by today's standards, but back then I loved it.
He's got an OBE and a CBE. He won Sports Personality of the Year twice, in 86 and 92, joining a very small list of people that have... only 4 people have ever won it twice, and actually another 2 of those were F1 drivers, Damon Hill and Hamilton. So there you go. The corner, turn 17, that he did the big pass around Berger at the Mexican Autodromo Hernandez Rodriguez has been named after him since 2015. He's an inductee in both International Motorsports Hall of Fame and the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. And before we move on to SAP stats, last but not least, he has to have had the world's greatest moustache that has ever been seen in Formula One.
The upper lip upholstery, the misplaced eyebrow, the dirt squirrel, the cookie duster, the flavor saver. Amazing. I do want to hit some SAP stats about this, and we're going to do a variety of them here, but I'm bringing out the mariachi because it's worth it for this. SAP stats, Nigel Mansell edition. All right, so we said he's the 92 world champ. He was the runner-up in 91, 86, 87. We talked about those seasons as well. But let's talk a little bit more about 92. He set the then record for most wins in a season with 9. That was broken by Schumacher in 02. He had 14 pole positions in 92, a record that was broken by Seb in 2011. He held the record for most races before becoming world champion with 180. So it took some time. I'm going to talk about longevity in a second because this kind of spurred some thinking for me. But then Nico Rosberg went 206 races before becoming world champion, so took that from him. In 92, he still held for quite some time the highest percentage of pole positions in a season, 88%. Holy cow. Most wins from pole position, 9. Most runner-up championship finishes before becoming world champion, 3. I mentioned the seasons already. So the most times kind of knocking on the door. He has the record for pole positions and fastest laps and then retiring from the race. So we talk about retirement, so I'm going to talk about that in a second. This guy, if he didn't retire, he pretty much won, or at least finished on the podium. And then he was also the driver, and this is a kind of obscure one, the most wins without ever winning Monaco, 31. Okay. So as we said, 92... Mansell, amazing season. At first, I started thinking to myself, is it up there with like Ascari in 52, which we learned from the Vale's Tales, Clark in 63, which we learned from the Vale's Tales when we covered it. It's pretty close. I'm going to hit one other stat, though, that kind of made me say maybe not as much. So in terms of 92, he's actually only 12th best in percentage of wins in a season. So still a fantastic year, set a ton of records. It's got to be up there. But in terms of number of wins in a season on a percentage basis, because the number of races has changed from 8 and 9 to 10 to 23 or 4 we want to do now. Ascari in 52 still won 75%, the highest. Schumacher in 04, 72%. Jim Clark in 63, 2 seasons we've already rattled off, 70%. Seb, Max last year, by the way, 68.18. Fangio, Hamilton, Schumacher, Clark, Hamilton, Vettel, and then Mansell in 12th. 56.25% of the races he won that year, 9 of the 16 races. So a dominant season for sure, but he didn't close as many wins. However, is there maybe a reason behind that? We'll talk about retirements here right now. He had 92 retirements of his 187 GPs he raced. 92, that's 49%. Almost half. 49% of the time, he didn't finish the race he started because of a retirement, more often than not mechanical. I was shocked. We recognize, reliability wasn't a thing back then, but holy cow, Rob, is that a lot?
That is a huge amount. It really is. Are you at the end of your stats for your part?
31 wins of those 187 GP, 16.5%, 32 poles, 30 fastest laps. 59 podiums. That's 32% of the time he finished on the podium. One stat that I always look at for a Vale's Tales driver and usually don't mention because it's not that big of a startling item, his average starting grid position through his entire career, those 187 GP, 6.4. His average finishing position, 3.9. He improved dramatically in every race that he finished. Just tremendous. He's 8th on the all-time wins list with 31, one behind Alonso, now has 32. And the last thing I would say about the man with the best lip foliage, grass grin, face lace, bristle batons, and bromerang, is that he went 9 years, 1 month, and 7 days between his first and last wins. And when we talk about longevity, as we have throughout his career, it's the 13th best F1 driver ever in terms of delta between first and last victories. Now, it seems great until you realize number one is Kimi with 15 years and 6 months between his first and last wins. So there are others who have definitely had, amazing long careers, but Nigel can't be overlooked, and his 92 season is tremendous. So back to you.
Well, we got two things then, just to round this off. We asked on our Discord channel, we asked for anybody that wanted to drop any Mansell-related either memories or stats in. Brian, can you tee us up whatever you want? Another SAP stats
Yes.
little snippet. Go for it. And just before I read these out, actually, it also goes without saying that those SapStat jingles, we ran a little call to arms like a long time ago now, asking for listeners to kind of write their own SapStat jingles. So if you're kind of new to the dirty side and think Brian made all of these, he didn't. Some very skilled listeners did it. And if you'd like to add yours, if you are musically inclined and you'd like to record a SapStat jingle, then knock yourself out, record it, send it in to dirtysideofthetrack@gmail.com, and we will slot it in and give you a shout out. And it will just go to Brian's soundboard of never-ending SapStat jingles. So anyway, the first one's here. He went to the effort of writing them, so I'm going to have to read some of them out. I don't think I can read all of them out, but past DRS guest Az sent in fake facts about Nigel Mansell. Maybe because he didn't know any real facts and he just wanted to be on the episode. So, fake fact number one, he is often mixed up with Magnum PI.
I mean, big mustache drives a Ferrari?
Exactly. Number two, his tash is so hard it can be used as a bottle opener. Number three, it's not true that nothing scares him. He is scared that his moustache will lose its power.
These are like
are you going to go for the Chuck Norris gags?
These are Chuck Norris.
Just wait, because that one comes in here, right? So, Mansell's tash was DRS version 0.1. He had to replace his helmet after every race as the tash was too abrasive. When Mansell left F1, it left the field open for Chuck Norris to play Walker Texas Ranger. So there you go. He managed to get one of those in. The last one's too long to read out. So there you go, Az. I read it out. Now, Lee, that had given us the idea to do the Mansell one, he actually did something serious, so thanks, Lee. We mentioned about Mansell's iconic helmet. He did have kind of these two arrows on the side of the helmet, that the colour scheme of the arrows and the colour scheme of the helmet kind of came together to kind of make a Union Jack. What he was also known as was Red 5. It's always been something that's kind of followed him around, and Lee did us a little write-up. I say quick, it's quite long, but I will give us the crib notes here. So the origin of Red 5 is that Mansell had been associated with the number of 5 for many years. When he began Williams in 1985, he was allocated car number 5 because at the time the Formula 1 racing numbers were allocated by constructor and Williams got given 5 and 6. So he went in number 5. From a distance, the 5 and the 6 look very, very similar to each other, so Mansell's got given a red version of the number to make it more distinctive, and it was just for recognition purposes. But Murray Walker, the legend, latched onto it and used to basically scream, "Here comes Red 5," which, if you're a Star Wars fan, that basically means that Luke Skywalker and Nigel Mansell are the same person. I basically kept it as he went to different teams. He had to retain the number. When he went over to IndyCar, actually, they were happy to have the Red 5 in there because the red fit really well into the livery of the Indy car, so he kind of got to drive it again. So it's like, I'm not sure there's been, yes, Hamilton's 44, and there are numbers that are associated, but the numbers seem to be bigger than just a number. It became this thing. It was Red 5, and so I'd kind of forgotten that, so thanks, Lee, for bringing that to our attention. And I think on that kind of ties a moustache-shaped bow around the career of Nigel Mansell, and
I think it does.
I still can't get over that first story of discharging himself from hospital after he'd almost become paralysed. I mean,
I can't believe all of the times he sold everything from his house with his wife to quitting his job as an aerospace engineer and selling everything to get back into Formula Ford, to, as you said, hopping out of hospital, to his continued retirements if he didn't get what he wanted, to his list of demands with Frank Williams. But I love this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one last thing that I just missed off the Red 5 thing, and this will be our final thought for him, is so associated with Red 5 was he that in 2004 he purchased a yacht from Sunseeker, which was one of his longtime sponsors. And do you know the name of that boat, Brian?
Red 5?
Wow! Yes, it was. So, no, that was fun. I enjoyed pulling that together. So thanks, Lee, for suggesting Mansell for a Vale's Tale. We'll add him to our list of people we've covered. If anyone's got any kind of suggestions for drivers they'd like to hear us kind of pick through again, that would be more than welcome. Hit us up on Twitter or in the email or however you want to carry a pigeon. We'll take anything.
Awesome. Rob, that was a great episode. Thanks for driving the Vale's Tales for us. Lee, thanks for the idea. Everybody, thanks for the feedback. As always, we appreciate you joining us on the dirty side, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Be well, everyone.